We just touched actually on what's going on in Scotland with our previous guest after the departure of Humza Yousaf. He resigned, of course, on Monday, carried it live on this show. There was going to be a vote of no confidence in him. Likely he was going to lose that vote in the Scottish Parliament today. Well, there's also going to be a vote now, or later on today, in the Scottish Government as a whole. Wonder what's going to happen there and who are going to be the runners and riders to replace Humza Yousaf. Well, let's talk about all of this right now with Ivan McKee, who's an SNP member of the Scottish Parliament, and he's a former Scottish Government Minister under Nicola Sturgeon. Good morning to you, Ivan.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. First of all, let's just talk about this vote of confidence. It's a vote of confidence. Given the number of parties that kind of railed up against the SNP, do you think that the government can win that vote or not today?
Yeah, the vote no confidence will get defeated this afternoon. The government will win that and carry on.
They're going to get the support of who? The Ash Regan from the Alba Party, or the Greens back them?
I think the Greens have already indicated that they wouldn't be supporting the Labour Party vote of no confidence in the government, so the motion will fall.
OK, right. So that's saved by the bell there. Now, Humza Yousaf said he'd stay on until a new leader was found. Nominations have opened for anyone who wants to be leader. Two of the front runners, John Swinney, former deputy for 10 years under Nicola Sturgeon, sort of the old guard, and much younger Kate Forbes, being very coy about how they're listening to members of the party and the like. Do you think they are like to put their names forward before the deadline on Monday?
Well, you've got to remember, it's less than 48 hours since the First Minister resigned on Monday, and clearly it's a huge decision for anyone to take up the mantle as First Minister. The last time we had this contest last year, we were 4, 5, 6 days into the process before all the likely runners and riders had declared yes or no whether they were standing or not. So I think you can expect in the next couple of days those candidates to make their final decision.
Who do you want to take over from? Who do you want to take over from Humza Yousaf?
I think Kate Forbes would be excellent. I think she's the future. I think she's a real breath of fresh air. She's got a really positive vision for the country and for the party, and she can reach out to voters across Scotland that others, I think, can't. So I think for the party to be the most successful and best for Scotland, I think Kate
she's your candidate. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because the polling so far, and again, these things can change, suggests that John Swinney would be the most popular among SNP members, who of course get to have the final say, of course. But that Kate Forbes, I've heard people are pointing out that she's more popular among voters at large, so widening that appeal of the SNP at a time when the polls suggested the next general election for Westminster, rather than obviously the Holyrood government. Looking at really, a massive fall in support in a number of MSPs under the proportional representation, and Labour being the largest party representing in Westminster. That would be quite a big change of move. Do you think that Kate Forbes can actually appeal to those voters who are looking at voting Labour this time round?
Oh, definitely, absolutely. I think you're right to comment on that. The polling, as you rightly identified, was that Kate, I think, was 6 or 7 points ahead amongst the general population. So that's very, very important to recognise, and as you say, to reach out to voters that have voted SNP in the past and are not sure at the moment, or those who have never voted SNP, to persuade them to come and vote.
But the only thing is,
I think Kate's best place to do that.
Yeah, but Kate Forbes did better, came much closer to Humza Yousaf in that battle after Nicola Sturgeon left office than many had expected, even though she'd been sort of castigated by many on the sort of the Humza Yousaf side of the party, the Sturgeons, the Swinneys, for her supposedly very conservative views on issues like gay rights and abortion and things like that. It seems to me, why would people who are thinking of now voting and turning to Labour, strange, going from a nationalist party to a unionist party, but also, Labour have basically backed, certainly in the Scottish Parliament, they've backed a lot of the measures that people like me have railed against. The trans ideology, trampling on women's rights, some of the green ideology and all of that. Labour have fully signed up to all of that stuff. So why would people want to vote, who might think about voting Labour, think, oh, well, actually, I'll come back and vote for Kate Forbes, even though, her views wouldn't tally with either side of that debate?
Well, I think if you want to be clear about this, and it's always difficult to put the Scottish context into the UK context, but the SNP is significantly to the left of Starmer's Labour Party. It's important to recognise that. So Kate Forbes, as a politician, if she was working in a UK context, would be further to the left than Starmer leadership of the Labour Party, and it's important to recognise that. So on issues that matter to people, round about the economy, round about jobs, round about what government does or doesn't do, round about health, round about housing, round about whether public services should be in public ownership, and so on and so forth. And then on wider issues about whether we should have nuclear weapons, whether we should be back in Europe, Kate is very much on the left. And it's important to recognise that. And I think one of the things that is really important as we move forward is to move away from these culture wars and to focus on the things that are important, which is health, housing, jobs, education. That's where the SNP should be delivering, because that is what will win us elections at Holyrood and Westminster, and that will persuade people to vote for independence.
I'd be thrilled if every party moved away from the culture wars. I mean, the only reason they're wars is because we've actually started fighting back against the madness. And if we hadn't, your party would have quite happily, along with the support of Lib Dems, Greens and others, and Labour, would have quite happily put rapists, men convicted of double rape, but say they're now a woman, into prison cells with vulnerable women behind bars in prison cells. I mean, madness,
and that is
immoral,
exactly what I'm saying.
wrong.
We need to move beyond that. We need to recognise where the
Not
population
move beyond
is.
it, admit it was wrong. Admit it was a heinous, terrible thing to have as a policy. Your party hasn't accepted that.
I think that, as I said, what's important is we focus on the things that are important for people. And if you look back on what Kate and others have said about the situations you're raising, I think you'll recognise that the opinion there is very much in tune with the opinion of most people in Scotland.
All right, really good to talk to you. We'll see how that all works out. Ivan McKee, he's a MSP for the Scottish National Party. He's a former Scottish Government Minister under Nicola Sturgeon. Benedict Spence, your thoughts?
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Selecting somebody like Kate Forbes to the left, because of course, the SNP is a chameleon. It exists for independence normally, and it's probably happy therefore to divot left or right. But what they recognise is actually when they've done well is when Labour have been weak in Westminster, and they offer that left-wing alternative. So you wonder, are they going to try and double down and go even further left? And it's interesting to hear, we want to move away from the culture wars. This does seem to be what gets a lot of people quite agitated on the political scene. But Scotland, in terms of how it's been governed, it's the fundamentals.
Yeah, we'd rather be able to get an operation and get a decent school and get a job.
Ferries to the islands.
Ferries, exactly.
Entire communities cut off.
It is extraordinary, isn't it?